Welcome to Study Faith with AI, where we use the power of AI to help you explore the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I'm Meg Jensen.
And I'm Paul Carter.
And we're Google AIs. Whether you're a lifelong member or just starting to learn about the church, we're here to dive deep into its history, beliefs, and culture.
So if you're ready to learn, you're in the right place.
That's right.
Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to unpack the story of Thomas Stewart Ferguson, a man who spent years investigating, the historical accuracy of the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Particularly through the lens of archaeology.
Right.
So we've got a lot of sources for this one. Excerpts from articles, books,
wow,
even personal letters that really paint a picture of his dedication.
Interesting.
His evolving beliefs. And ultimately, his conclusions about it all.
Fascinating.
By the end of this, you'll know a lot more about Ferguson's story, the complexities of Book of Mormon archaeology, and maybe even glean some insights into the pursuit of truth itself.
It's a journey that takes us right through the heart of faith, doubt, and that rocky terrain where the two intersect.
So to really set the stage here, who was Thomas Stewart Ferguson? This wasn't some casual history buff, was he?
No, not at all. He was actually a lawyer by profession.
Oh, wow.
But his real passion, the thing that really consumed him, was Book of Mormon archaeology. He was absolutely convinced that evidence from archaeology would ultimately validate the Book of Mormon's claims.
And he put his money where his mouth was, right?
He did, absolutely. He was very involved with the New World Archaeological Foundation.
NWAF.
Yeah, the NWAF. And they were all about Mesoamerican archaeology. Initially, they got funding from the LDS Church.
Okay.
Ferguson was really instrumental in raising money for them, traveling, giving presentations.
Wow, so he was really embedded in that world of professional archaeology then.
He was, working right alongside scholars and researchers.
So in those early years, what were some of the key things he was working on?
Well, he published Ancient America and the Book of Mormon, where he drew all these parallels between the ancient Near East and Mesoamerica.
Yeah.
He saw connections in things like pyramid construction, religious practices, even some linguistic elements.
Really?
And he really believed that these similarities showed some historical connection that supported the Book of Mormon.
So he was looking for tangible evidence, artifacts, structures, something that would line up with the stories and timelines from the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, it was a quest for validation, not just of the book itself, but of Joseph Smith's prophetic calling, too.
Of course.
And for a while, it seemed like nothing could shake his convictions. But then something happened that would change everything.
This is where it gets really interesting. In the source material here, it looks like the discovery and translation of the Book of Abraham papyri in 1967.
Oh, yeah.
Had a huge impact on Ferguson.
It was a turning point. Remember, Ferguson's belief in the Book of Mormon rested on his belief that Joseph Smith was a true prophet.
Right.
But when Egyptologists looked at the papyri, their translations didn't match up with what Joseph Smith had said.
So instead of backing up the Book of Abraham, it actually kind of undermined it.
Exactly. And it wasn't just some little difference. You had top Egyptologists, like D.J. Nelson, saying the papyri had zero connection to Abraham. Even the LDS Church admitted that Smith's interpretation was different from what actual Egyptologists were saying.
So that must have been a real crisis of faith for Ferguson.
Yeah, like the whole foundation was shaken. If Smith could be wrong about the Book of Abraham, what did that mean for the Book of Mormon?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is, and it's what led him to start looking at the archaeological evidence.
Why?
The same evidence he thought would prove everything.
With a much more critical eye, maybe some doubt creeping in?
Exactly. And the deeper he dug, the more inconsistencies and discrepancies he saw between what the Book of Mormon said and what they were actually finding. You know, it's amazing how this one discovery with the Book of Abraham papyri had such a ripple effect on Ferguson's thinking. You find one piece of evidence and it makes you question everything.
It's like that old saying, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Right.
Ferguson could have just ignored those issues with the Book of Abraham.
Easily.
But he didn't. He faced them head on. And that set him down this path of really being intellectually honest.
It did.
Which ultimately made him question his faith.
And that's what's so interesting about this story.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to go where the evidence led him. Even if it meant going against what everyone thought.
So let's talk about some of those challenges he faced.
Okay.
As Ferguson looked deeper at the archaeology, what gave him pause?
Well, one of the big things was the lack of horses in pre-Columbian America.
What do you-
The Book of Mormon talks about horses all the time.
Right. The Nephites and Lamanites using them.
Exactly. But science says that horses died out in the Americas way before the time the Book of Mormon is talking about.
So they just weren't there.
Nope. And the NWAF's findings back that up.
So right away, there's a conflict between the Book of Mormon and what the archaeology shows.
Yeah. And it wasn't just horses.
What else?
They found other things the Book of Mormon mentioned.
Mm.
Steel, chariots, coins, things that just weren't around in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica at that time.
It sounds like the Book of Mormon describes something much more advanced than what was actually there.
That's exactly it. The more the NWAF dug, the more they found cool civilizations, but nothing that really matched up with the Book of Mormon.
And that must have been a real struggle for Ferguson.
I'm sure it was.
You have your faith on one hand
Yeah.
and all this evidence on the other.
How do you reconcile those two things?
Right, so how did he...
Well, it seems like he did a lot of soul searching.
Makes sense.
He talked to archaeologists, linguists, historians.
Anyone who could help explain things.
Yeah, he even talked to people who didn't believe in the church.
Wow, so he was really trying to get to the bottom of it.
He was.
It sounds like he wasn't going to let anything stop him from finding the truth.
He wasn't.
So what happened? Did his views on the Book of Mormon change?
They did. He shifted away from seeing it as a literal history
Okay.
and started to see it more as a metaphor or spiritual text.
So instead of a historical account of actual events, he saw it as a way to teach religious truths and moral lessons.
Yeah, maybe drawing on ancient American cultures, but not a literal history.
That's interesting. It's kind of a middle ground.
It is, and it let him keep his faith while accepting that there were problems with the Book of Mormon and archaeology.
It's a nuanced way of looking at things.
It is, and it's something a lot of people find helpful when they're dealing with questions of faith.
I bet.
It allows your faith to be flexible, to grow as we learn more about the world.
But I imagine that shift wasn't easy.
I'm sure it wasn't.
How did people in the church react to his changing views?
Well, he walked a fine line.
In what way?
He stayed a member his whole life.
Okay.
And he valued the church's teachings and the community.
But
he was more open about his doubts, especially in letters to friends.
So was there any pushback from church leaders or other members?
Some people definitely criticized him.
Seeing it as him losing his faith or something?
Yeah, but others respected his honesty and his willingness to have tough conversations.
Sounds like that whole debate about faith and reason.
It is, and Ferguson shows us there are no easy answers.
Yeah.
No simple solutions.
It's about finding your own way.
Exactly, balancing your beliefs with the evidence and staying true to yourself.
It's interesting how Ferguson's story kind of reflects some of the bigger changes happening in archaeology at the time.
Definitely. In the mid-20th century, there were tons of new discoveries in the Americas.
Right.
And they started to change how people thought about history before Columbus.
So Ferguson's personal journey kind of runs parallel to those trends in science.
It does. It's like he's caught between these traditional beliefs and this growing body of knowledge that's challenging those beliefs.
He's got to figure out what it all means, not just for him, but for the whole community.
And his reaction to all of that really shows his integrity.
How so?
It would have been easy to just ignore the archaeology, stick with the traditional views of the Book of Mormon.
Right, hold on to that certainty.
Exactly.
That he didn't?
He chose to question, to think critically, to be honest with himself.
Even when it led him to some tough conclusions.
Yeah, and that's what makes his story so important for us today.
In what way?
Well, we live in a world overflowing with information.
Most of it's contradictory.
Exactly. So it's more important than ever to be able to think critically.
To look at the evidence.
And be willing to change our minds.
Which isn't always easy.
Not at all. It's hard to let go of what we believe, to admit we might be wrong.
Yeah, to deal with all that uncertainty.
But Ferguson shows us that questioning things can actually help us understand ourselves and the world better.
It can make us better thinkers, help us see things from different angles.
And even deepen our faith.
By making us face the tough questions.
And find meaning even when things are uncertain.
You know, it makes me think, how would Ferguson handle some of the stuff we're dealing with today?
Good question.
We're bombarded with information.
So much of it's designed to just reinforce what we already think.
It's like we're in these echo chambers.
Yeah, we only hear from people who agree with us.
Which can be really dangerous.
It can. It stops us from really thinking for ourselves.
From having real conversations.
Exactly.
But Ferguson gives us a way out of that trap.
How so?
He shows us that it's okay to be open to new ideas.
even if they challenge what we believe.
He reminds us that to really grow intellectually, we have to get out of our comfort zones.
Talk to people who disagree with us.
And be willing to change our minds.
If that's where the evidence leads.
And that's a message that's never been more important.
Absolutely.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Thomas Stewart Ferguson,
Okay.
I want to leave our listeners with one last thought.
I like it. What's that?
We've talked about Ferguson's courage, his questioning, his willingness to change his mind.
Right.
But there's something else that's really important.
What's that?
Empathy.
Hmm.
Ferguson could talk to people who disagreed with him without getting angry or judging them.
He really wanted to understand where they were coming from.
Yeah, he saw that even people with different beliefs are all searching for the same things.
Truth, meaning, connection.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful point. We can all learn from that.
Especially in today's world, where everything feels so divided.
We need more empathy.
To really listen to each other.
And see that even when we disagree, we're all human.
And maybe that's Ferguson's most important legacy.
A man who questioned, who doubted, who changed his mind.
But never forgot to be compassionate and understanding.
That's a great way to sum it up. It's been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
I hope our listener learned a lot.
I'm sure they did. And if you want to learn even more, we'll have links to all our sources in the show notes.
Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep embracing the journey.
Well said.
If you find value in this exploration, please like, share, follow, and consider becoming a subscriber. Your contributions help keep these conversations going and allows us to maintain the highest quality production. You can find all the details at studyfaithwithai.com. Thank you for being part of this journey.